Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Do we all feel well fed? Yes, well fed and watered? Excellent. So, time for a bit more intellectual nourishment. We come to a very interesting part of the day where we're going to discuss towards a professional association for English medium schools. And it's going to be my great pleasure in a moment to introduce Ashok Pandey. But before I do that, I'd like to just read out a short quotation from the American anthropologist Margaret Mead. She said, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has." So with that thought in mind, I would like to welcome Ashok Pandey, who is going to present his ideas about a professional association in India. And then we are going to circulate a proposed roadmap. And then there will be time for a bit of a workshop. Now, we all understand what workshop means, don't we? You work, I shop. Because I've been in Delhi for a few days and I haven't had a chance to shop, and I can't go back without buying a gift for my wife. Okay, so we're going to have a brief workshop and then we're all going to come back together. How does that sound? Yes? So, can we give a warm welcome to Ashok Pandey?
Thank you, George, for a wonderful setting of the tone for this rather heavy session after lunch. You thanked a lot of people when you gave your presentation in the morning. And since this is about sharing and learning from each other, I have also learned a couple of lessons from George. And I would like only to thank all those who have stayed back after lunch. I think... But sorry, a small correction. I would also like to thank those who have come after lunch. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. This has been a wonderful day, wonderful morning. And two things that have been the, what we call narration of the whole program this morning. One is professional association. And the second is subsets. These are the two words which were spoken about the most in these sessions that we had before lunch. And so I would also like to talk about those two things only. And therefore, you'll have to pardon me if there is any repetition or if you at any stage feel that, no, it is going to be overdose. And therefore, I will only make two changes, or what we call, since it is an English language development program, what we call in English is tweaking. So one tweaking is that instead of a subset, I'll do an universal set, okay? The overarching of all that we are doing. And the second that we will do is that instead of just talking about the professional development, we will put to you a framework, as George said, and you will work on it, and probably if we really collaborate with each other at the end of this session, lasting about 45 minutes or so, I think we will have something concrete to present to all of us. So I think, George, am I right? That's what the thing to come about? Okay. So I will just give you, in the morning, two people at least I remember, in fact, three, Keith, George, and Amol, they have given you a practical framework in which the professional development works. I read some time ago that theory without practice is useless. And practice without theory is dangerous. So we have some practice, and therefore let us have some theory also as to what this is all about. So professional association, what is it? If it is a little bad, I'm sorry, but I'll read it for you. The idea of professional association is one well worth pursuing as a means of promoting schools and system-wide capacity building. for sustainable improvement and pupil learning. So see, the bottom line is all that we do, it must end in some form of enhancement of pupil learning. So that's one. And now we think that since we are talking about education, the corporate world does not talk about education. In fact, there is a relationship between what they do with education and what we are learning in education from the corporate world. And therefore, I found a quote by the former IBM CEO who says, the educators and policy makers are recognizing that it is time for standards-based reforms. We need to place a greater priority on strengthening the capacity of educators and building learning communities. Learning community is something to be underlined here, to deliver higher standards for every child. So I think this is the theoretical philosophy, and we want to work under this. And then I also thought of giving two contexts in which any professional association or professional association body works. One is the context of socialization, which we talk about quite a lot. And socialization has been talked about in terms of an instrument where learning takes place, where acquisition of knowledge takes place. And in the earlier times, and at least, if George would agree, at least up to the 20th century, we always talk of socialization. And perhaps towards the later part of the century, we talked about networking. So these were the two operative words which brought people together for learning. So context one, in my opinion, is socialization as a process of lifelong learning, which was talked about in the morning also, promoting multiculturalism, acquiring knowledge, skills, dispositions, and all about being human. So this is one context. And the second context is very important because we are living in these times, and that is the professional learning communities of 21st century. I have something very special to say about that, but first I would like to read this context for you. The most successful function as professional communities where teachers help one another, take collective responsibility for student learning, and work continuously to improve their teaching practices. Schools with strong professional communities offer more authentic pedagogy and are more effective in encouraging student achievement. So I think in this context, all of us will agree that how important it is for us to quickly form some kind of professional learning community. And this is also in alignment with what we call 21st century learning and 21st century schools, 21st century principals, and 21st century teachers. The crux of the 21st century learning is that we have to teach our children how to think critically, how to communicate well, how to solve their problems, and how to work in a collaborative manner. And therefore, my argument is that if we want our children to imbibe all these qualities, then should we not ourselves first imbibe these? So we can say that with our training and background and experience, we have a lot of experience in communication, in problem solving, maybe in critical thinking as well, but probably the collaboration is one area which could be, if not completely dark, at least it is a gray area. And therefore, the purpose of this presentation is to highlight and to bring the collaborative attitude amongst us in the center stage of our discussion. So what are the key characteristics of learning communities that we propose to form? So first characteristic is we have to have a shared value and vision for that professional association. Very important. Second is that we will have to have collective responsibility for people's learning because we don't want to compromise on that. Third is our collaboration is to be focused on learning. Individual and collective professional learning, again, though it is a bit overlapping, but there is a fine distinction out here. Reflective professional inquiry. We have to constantly ask questions. Are we taking risks? Are we making suitable changes in our own pedagogy? Are we taking the feedback of the learners who are the beneficiaries of our work in the classroom? What do they think about us? And are we prepared to change? are we prepared to make changes in our practices? And that is what I mean here by reflective professional inquiry. Openness, networks, and partnerships. These will be the operative words. The membership should be very, very inclusive. It is not a very, very elite or exclusive group of membership. And all members of the professional association should exhibit utmost trust, respect, and support to each other. And why do we call it professional learning communities? All three words used here have their own context and have their own importance. So we say it is professional because we must talk about this specialized knowledge in 21st century. We must follow some kind of ethics of our services that we provide to our children, parents, and all stakeholders. We have to have some kind of commitment. Once we become part of a professional group, we have a collective identity. Our identity, individual identities, merge into that collective identity. And we have to follow standards and practices. If we do all these, then we qualify to call ourselves professionals. Though we want to call ourselves, we often complain or lament that teachers have not been recognized as professionals in the same sense as engineers or doctors or IT professionals or something like that. So probably these are the areas that we need to reflect on, that how we can strengthen this so that it becomes a kind of a specialized territory over which we have got some kind of control. That's what I mean here. Learning, how it is learning entity and how does it promote learning? If these things happen, if it enriches our learning, if we are prepared to reinvent certain practices and shed the practices which have not worked, which are old. George was mentioning about 21st century teachers and classrooms and all that, but probably with some hesitation I can say that we are, in Indian context, 21st century learners, but 20th century teachers, taught by 19th century their teachers. So if we have to come to terms with the needs of 21st century learners, I think we have to reinvent the practices. That's what I mean here. Common understanding of our learning issues. And all that we learn through this association, that should have its direct bearing and impact in the classrooms on our students. So that is the learning part defined in this. And of course, how do we become a community? Because all of us will have a common identity. We will have mostly common practices with reinvention taking place continuously. Our cause will be common, our beliefs will be common. We will work for the student improvement, and we will become inclusive with each other and also inclusive with all the stakeholders. As a professional learning community, we will not only look after our own individual interests, and we will consciously keep away from pursuing personal interests, rather than what we will do is that we'll look into the interests of the other stakeholders, our schools, our teachers, parents, and society at large. So this is what I mean by professional learning community. Now all that has a finding by the research. It has a research support. It is not something that, that has come in somebody's mind, or I think it is my invention. No way. What researchers say in support of this, a couple of findings I have written here and I'll read it for you. Sustained and intensive professional development for teachers is related to achievement of these students. There is a direct correlation. And a lot of researches are available here. Data is available here. Collaborative approaches to professional learning promotes school improvement. This is also supported by findings of research. There is always an issue of who will invest in the professional development of teachers. I'm sure I'm not promoting anything else here. The managements have to do it, the government has to do it, the society has to invest in the professional development of teachers, but I think sometimes we also have to invest in our own learning and growth. And therefore, this research finding I quoted here, that American teachers are among the highest who invest on their own in their professional development. So that is just a finding if it inspires some of us. And then the fourth finding is professional development program ranging from 30 to 100 hours spread over 6 to 12 months shows positive and significant effect on the student achievement. That is also one of the findings. So where is the problem? What inhibits us? So probably the lack of open door attitude and sharing. That is maybe one reason. What is happening in the classrooms stays in the classrooms. So lack of sharing again. If we can open the doors of our classroom and shout at the door, come in and see what we are doing and learning, it is so exciting. If that kind of open door policy we have, that will build trust with each other, and that will bring solutions, which are solutions resulting out of collaborative learning. So that is the background in which we are proposing to have a professional association. We have called here English medium schools because we generally assume, John, that we are talking of the private schools here in Delhi, and that is why the name has been given. And now what we are going to do is, George will distribute a paper, which is a framework for the professional development body. And probably we can go through it, we can work in a group as instructed by George, and then we would like to have your views and suggestions on that. Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you, George.
Ashok, you just want to say a couple of words about...
Okay. So just by way of introduction of this sheet, which is going round. In this, what we have done is, certain headings are there if you read. The first point is, what is the purpose of an association? The second is, what are the functions of this association? Who is membership open to? What kind of a structure will the association have? And what is the roadmap? How do we create the association? These are 4 or 5 broad categories under which this paper has been presented. Kindly go through it and enrich this paper with your suggestions and views. Yeah, George. Yeah.
Okay, so I understand that Ashok is a tree, is that right? Among other things, in India. This is an Ashok tree. Ashok tree. So Ashok has sown the seed of this tree. It's up to you guys now to think about what kind of shape you feel that tree should take. And I think the best way to do that is if we form groups of about 5 or 6 people to discuss these points, so that in about 20 minutes we can come back together to hear your ideas and your questions. Is that okay? So if we could form ourselves into groups of 5 and 6. Do you want to sort of circle a little bit just so that you can... Right. Okay. So, my role here is entirely to facilitate, not to obligate, okay? So, I just wanted to ask people, I'd like you to put on your red hat, you know, the one for emotion, Edward de Bono, the red hat, and just to answer, you know, what do you feel about this idea? Can you just put your hand up if you think it's a good idea, in general? Good idea? Okay. If you think it's a bad idea for whatever reason? Okay, 1 or 2 people. Not sure? Don't care? No? Okay, right. So that's most people broadly in favour of it. Okay, excellent. Okay. So perhaps people would like to ask questions to Ashok? Unless you...
Yeah, okay, please. You're welcome. If time is less, we'll take less questions. Yeah.
Thank you for the session and this paper, Ashok. I am LV Sehgal. I just wanted to know that there is nothing mentioned about funds in this. That who is going to fund this association?
Excellent question. Yes.
You see, my answer to that question is that two things are avoided in any discussion. One, which is obvious, and one which is too controversial. So, no, I got your point. Yeah.
If it is going to be a self-funded association,
Yeah.
then under the who is membership open to,
Yeah.
I think you should add the members will be prepared to invest time and money.
Money, funds, yeah. So, good.
Excellent
So,
point.
thank you very much, Mr. Sehgal. Mr. Sehgal has been the chairman of one of the largest associations in this country, and that is called National Progressive Schools Conference. So, you can understand what vast experience he has, and I attribute half of his gray hair to his chairmanship of 2 years. So, thank you very much. So, that is there. Yes,
Lady over
ma'am.
there.
You are making note, no?
You said we had to avoid anything controversial, but I just had this thought that there is competition among schools and the compulsion of increasing admissions at the cost of some other school. So it may be a little difficult to convince people of this idea of sharing and coming together and giving out their best practice secrets to others.
I think probably I'll request George also to say something about it, but I would certainly say one thing, that there is so much of knowledge available in the open that first of all there is hardly anything to be shared. Having said that, let me tell you, I think your competitive edge will increase in present time only if you share. Let me tell you that. If you don't share, you're already out of competition. That's my answer. Yeah.
That's an excellent answer. I don't want to add to that. That was an excellent answer.
Oh, thank you. Okay.
Question, lady over there. Once again, this side of the room is asking all the questions. I don't know what it is.
No. More. So let sharing take place. Let this side be enlightened. Yeah.
So another thing, the purpose of association, we were thinking if we could also add on collaborating on different events, like the sports day at the level of the district or a region where all the schools come together and share their resources. Somebody has a beautiful swimming pool, so city level or a regional level competition can be held there. Somebody has an excellent football field. That resource can be utilized to conduct the football matches. Somebody else has another beautiful resource which can be effectively utilized. After all, the infrastructure is limited and the quality would be available to more number of students and the teachers.
Fine, good. And probably it will depend upon how much it is feasible and what will be the focus of this association. If the focus is to develop pedagogy, if the focus is to develop English language teaching and learning abilities, then probably we'll have to narrow down our objectives. But otherwise, that idea is fantastic. Yeah, yes, sir.
We feel the first point is what is the purpose of association, where if we can have the purpose of ownership, that is one of the purpose of every association that each member
Is the owner, yeah.
is mine.
Owners, okay, yeah.
And then the functions of the association, that action research is to be brought in, that is culture of research
Yeah.
is to be brought in the association itself, and that then it can be passed on
To the other schools. Very good. Yeah.
And then comes the, who is the member open to? I would say the practitioners, past practitioners also, and others who have interest and inclination towards the education development of this. Not only the teachers or ex-teachers, principals or ex-principals, but even non-educationists who have some interest to contribute in the field of education, they can also be the member. Then comes the kind of structure the association would have. If it can be in the shape of a quality circle, not that one man, then 2%, 3%, that is a formal and traditional one, if it is a quality circle. And how do we create the association? The steps which have been mentioned that really worth reading and it can be adopted.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your views. I'm sure John has made note of those suggestions.
Thank you. Under the purposes of education, what this group felt that if you may like to add, to make members aware of any new developments, etc. And yes, and under the functions of the association, if we can somehow bring in the recognition of institutions for any good work done in any area, if it can be considered. Yes. And one more only one more. That the steps which you have written are very well drafted. The only thing is that if step number 1 and 3 can go simultaneously.
Fine. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think this is, I believe, a voice of dissent?
Yes.
Okay.
Sure.
A voice of dissent, please. Yeah.
Means we are not talking about the association of teachers and giving them more power to them. Because, see, in association with institution, and if we talk about an association of teachers, which should not be compelled with the institution, then new thought process may occur with the help of teachers to, if you allow them to think openly, apart from their daily obligations to reporting to institutions. Because in terms of institutions, there are n number of obligations. And especially in India, if I talk about, and due to which institutions are not able to take decisions, they take a lot of time in taking decisions. Whereas teachers want to apply, but they do not have a strong sharing what we were talking about. That, okay, what others teachers will think, means they will be with me on this platform or not. So there should be a bonding amongst the teachers and association.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks a lot. Yeah.
I think we're talking once again back to sets. Okay, we've got a subset which is professional associations for teachers, and there's another subset which is professional association of institutions. They're both valid from my point of view. Another question. Someone who hasn't spoken, perhaps?
Well, our group, sorry, I'm Adhiraj Singh, and we had quite a few members in our group. And I've come all the way from Ajmer, Mayur School. I'm the vice principal there. First one, the purpose. If we could also clarify within the purpose, how would this association be different from what, like Mr. Pandey right now talked of the NPSC, the Sahodaya complexes and all? How would this be different from those? Because, you know, some potential members might say, oh, we are already part of so many associations. What is different and what is special about this? Coming to the purpose, the functions, we thought some kind of development of educational software, resources, etc. as group. Of course, that will come in the sharing part. Teacher exchanges, student exchanges between the members of the association, and some kind of a certification program would also add to the profile. And this was from one of the members, that to make all the members active, it would be nice if at least one best practice was to be shared once a year by every member. Otherwise, it might go into lethargy and people would not work. So there was some kind of an incentive for. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay.
Lady,
so,
just 1 minute.
George, can I give a little response to So Adhiraj's question was, and he's such a nice person, his first half was his question, second half was his answer. He says, what distinguishes it? The suggestions that you have given will distinguish it. Isn't it? That is why we're taking these suggestions. You introduce action research, you introduce research, you share best practices, you introduce rewarding and acknowledging schools, you have the British Council's patronship, you have the entire experience of the world to support this. I think these are the differentiators. And probably as this association grows, once it is formed, probably every day's new experience will become one differentiator every day. That's what my belief is. Okay? Thank you. Yeah.
Sir, actually, I was about to say that our group has decided on research as one of the basic purposes, which was not mentioned anywhere. One day, we would like to see a research on Indian educators, like you mentioned about American educators, and it's not mentioned in any of the areas.
Okay.
Another little thing is in the function, documentation and dissemination of best practices. Lot of times when we do it ourselves, the teachers don't have the time to document it also. So if there can be some framework and policy.
Fine.
And counseling, that was a suggestion from our group, from teacher to teacher counseling, that can also be done.
Good.
Thank you.
Very nice. Only one thing I wanted to add, the points which were missed, we are making note of it, and it will be incorporated given utmost respect. But as far as documentation is concerned, the modern day, George and John will concur with me, all the quality standards that we are talking about, the quality standards have got three very, very important components. The first is documentation, and that is something we distaste a lot. So probably we'll have to start thinking as to how to practice documentation. The second is observation. So if we say that we are having best practices in the classroom, probably the experts and the specialists will come to the classroom and they will see whether your learning objectives, which you have documented before you went to the class, how much it is being realized while you are teaching, and how much it is corroborated through assessment. So all these things will be evidenced. So documentation, observation, and then who are the stakeholders? The students and the parents. So the specialists will talk to the students and to the parents, and they will find out from them what has been their experience. So this triangle of documentation, direct observation, and face-to-face discussion will form the three vertices of quality standards. So I think those things will also come from this. Am I right?
I hope so.
Am I right? Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, well, we come to an interesting point now because, as Karl Marx said, the philosophers have only interpreted the world. The point, however, is to change it. So, who would be interested in working with Ashok and others to take forward this idea? Let's have a show of hands of people who would like to volunteer.
So, working with John and British Council, please stand up so that they can see your lovely face and raise more hands.
Could you?
Yeah.
Right. Could we just have people standing up so that we can see a public commitment to the idea? Come on. Excellent. Fantastic. Look at that. Right. And those of you sitting down,
only
please
British
applaud.
Council people are not standing.
Those of you sitting, please applaud the people who are standing up.
Chris did not stand.
Excellent. Okay. So I would suggest, John Shackleton, secretary, are you getting all the names down there, are you? Yeah? Okay. Maybe we should take a photo just so
Thank
that...
you. Please sit down.
Okay. Excellent.
Yeah.
So
thank you.
I think we've come a long way in a very short space of time. Would you agree? It's absolutely fantastic to see something like this taking off, and that's the way change happens sometimes. I think that's absolutely wonderful, and I think Ashok has done such a fantastic job, has he not? So
thank you
so much.
Thank you.
And it's just so wonderful that all of those suggestions were very valid and very helpful
I really
ones.
thank you all for that. Yeah.
But I just want to finish with a story, and it's actually apparently a true story. General de Gaulle, he had a big garden, and he called his gardener into his study one day, and he told the gardener he wanted him to plant the seed of a particular tree. And the gardener protested that it would take 100 years for the tree to grow to its full height. So de Gaulle said, Therefore, there's no time to lose. Plant the seed this afternoon. So we have planted the seed this afternoon, and I look forward to coming back and seeing it grow. So thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Ashok.
So
Thank
you will have to be that gardener. Thanks
Thank
a
you.
lot. Thank you, George. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.